Welcome back to That's a Good Word, podcast designed to assist and equip Christians through advice from people in ministry. If you are blessed by our content, we ask that you would like and subscribe to our channel. Also, next week during Easter week, Holy Week, we'll be putting out a series of devotionals done by me and Keith Kelly that will be going through each day of Holy Week and focusing on a different story of Jesus' last week on earth up until the death and resurrection of Jesus. If you like to keep up with those, you can check out our Facebook page or Instagram or YouTube channel. We'll be posting those daily on each day of Holy Week. So if you're interested in that, you can see more about that on our social medias or check us out on YouTube. We are very honored today to have on Reverend Bennie Durham. I'm going to give him the opportunity in a second here to tell us a little bit about himself. But Bennie's been in many ministry roles throughout his career. He currently serves as a chaplain with the police department. Bennie, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. So I want to give you the opportunity just to tell us about your story in ministry and your testimony.
All right. Yeah, so God's been good to me. So kind of my testimony begins all the way back in 1967. That's when I was saved. 9-year-old boy, vacation Bible school. So I'm still an advocate of vacation Bible school because I got saved and the Lord changed my life there. So, a lot of the years through that, I don't want to talk about ashamed of. I did try to serve the Lord even as a young adult. The church I grew up in, North Greenville Baptist up above Pickens. And 15 years old, I was Sunday school graduate. Back in those days, everybody came into the sanctuary before Sunday school, and I did a little devotion about the lesson.
Right.
So I was getting trained at an early age with that. Never really realized what God was doing. Looking back, I'd see how I was getting trained to go in the ministry. So anyway, in my 20s, honestly, I don't remember exactly the year that I felt God called me to preach. And I was kind of like, I don't think I want to do that. So I kind of pushed that away and unfortunately went the wrong way, trying to get away from God. That didn't work. And finally in 1984, August of 1984, the Lord used my wife to get my attention. And it was kind of at the point where I'd make a decision, keep my family or keep that time I was a truck driver, driving out back to California every week. And it was kind of like, take the truck or you take us. And so God used her to really show me that I had to get my life squared away and do what he wanted me to do. So in May of 1985, I surrendered to ministry, got back in church in August of 84. I recommitted my life to the Lord and decided I'm through with the world and going to serve you. And in May of 85, God made that call fresh again in my life. And so I accepted the call and I didn't go to college out of high school. I was an auto mechanic when I came out of school, long stories with that stuff. So I started going back to school. Worked on my associate degree first, got a bachelor's degree with Fruitland Baptist Bible College now. And then went to Liberty University and did my bachelor's and then did a master's degree with North Greenville Graduate School. And so I began pastoring in 1987, October of 1987. My first church was up there off Highway 11, Saluda Hill Baptist Church. Was there from 87 to 91. Went to West Greenville Baptist Church as pastor in March of 91. Stayed there until March of 97. And then 1997, came to Marietta First Baptist Church and stayed there a little over 20 years.
Wow.
As pastor there. And during that time, I was, in 2000. In 2000, I started as a volunteer chaplain with the Greenville County Sheriff's Office. Sheriff Johnny Mac Brown was just going out as sheriff, retiring, and came in. Sam Simmons was sworn in. That was December of 2000, and January of 2001, Sam Simmons became sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, he died about a year and a half later of a heart attack. But we had to work with the sheriff's office as a volunteer chaplain, and Sheriff Simmons wanted us to become reserve deputies because we wore a uniform like this. We didn't have a gun. We were riding with deputies. So I became a reserve deputy in fall of 2001 and did that for 17 years. And was at Marietta, a church I loved dearly, still do. And I think they loved us. A lot of people say, why did you leave? They loved you and you loved them. I said, that's the best time to leave. You don't wait until they don't like you to leave. And so, but I knew God was calling me to something different. It's a long story. They won't take time to go through that. Things I wanted to do, because I love missions, done missions all around the world. And I thought, that's what I do. God's like, no. And I was like, well, maybe I need to be a director of missions. I love pastors. I love missions. And so, again, it's like God shutting all the doors, And I'm like, okay, God, I'll quit trying to tell you what I want to do. You tell me what you want to do. And so I was kind of, at that point, just be still and know that he's God, know that he's going to speak. And so then about 2 weeks later, the sheriff that time said, I want you to come on full time as chaplain and as deputy. And so I did. Well, that was in July of 2017. Thought I could stay a reserve deputy. At that time, I was 59. I'll be 65 at the end of this month. I was 59 years old. I was already an old man, and found out once I was full-time, I found out that I couldn't stay a reserve deputy. And so I either had to give up my gun and just be a chaplain, or go back to South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy for 12 weeks and get my Class 1 certification. And so I didn't have enough sense to know that was probably too hard for me to do. So I just did it, and I did it. I always say, by the grace of God and ibuprofen, I made it. So that physical part was tough. I was 59.
Yeah.
And so I've been there since July 3rd, 2017.
Wow.
So I've been full-time at Sheriff's Office.
That's awesome. Yeah. Just to talk a little bit about your time with Marietta. And the growth you saw there, 20 years. Right? That's awesome. A long time. Talk about how you saw the church grow and just the people grow there.
Yeah, it was amazing. It was one of those, I look back now, my first church, I didn't know anything. I was new, I was young. I guess I was 29, I guess, when I started pastoring there. And they gave me an opportunity. I'll never be forgetful of them, that they gave somebody who never pastored before, never held a staff position before. They gave me the opportunity to pastor. And so I had a learning curve. And so then I went to West Greenville Baptist Church, was there for 6 years. And it was a tough neighborhood, and I learned a lot there. But looking back now, I know that prepared me for Marietta. And so I'll never forget when the Sunday that Marietta sent pulpit committee to West Greenville, I knew somebody was probably going to be there, because during the week somebody comes and said, hey, we're just checking to see if you're preaching Sunday morning. Well, that's a clue, So I look out, and there's like 7 people on the left side and 7 people on the right side. And I thought, wow, that's the biggest pulpit committee I've ever seen in my life. And what I didn't know, there were 2 churches there, and they didn't know each other was there. And so the other church contacted me right after service and wanted to talk to you. I went, well, said something about the big committee, and they're like, well, there's only 7 of us. Like, oh, okay. And so then Marietta contacted me like 2 hours later and said, we'd like to talk to you. I'm like, okay, well, I thought y'all were one committee, and there's another church. I've already told them I talked to them. And they were like, well, we believe you're a man, that kind of thing. And so I said, well, I've already told you, so I don't deal with 2 churches at a time. So I met with the other church, talked with them, and immediately knew this was not where God wanted me. So I called Marietta, the chairman, Bob Mays was the chairman of the pulpit committee. I called him, I said, I'll meet with you. And so I did, and immediately knew. It's like, it's one of those things, people say, does God speak to you verbally? And I'm like, no, it's louder than that,
Yeah.
And it was just a confirmation in my heart. And so we met a couple times, and then we met at the church, and they wanted my wife to come with me. And so we're pulling in the parking lot. And as soon as I pulled in the parking lot, like the Lord spoke to my heart and said, you're home, and you're going to be here for a while. And so I went to my wife, and I'm like, this is where we're going, and we're going to be here a while. She's like, well, how do you know that? And I'm like, well, I'm just telling you, man. So, God confirmed that through the years. So it began. It was just a good fit. I don't know how to describe it. It was just like coming home. I mean, it was like you'd been away and just come. And there was just such a fit there. They still do love them. And they just loved us. And they love Bible preaching. And that's what I'm about. I'm like the old country preacher. He said, I'm too dumb to preach anything else besides the Bible, but I'm too smart to preach anything besides the Bible.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And so I just preached to them and challenged them. I don't remember who, I hear a lot of things about fast. I don't remember who said it. Somebody said, that wasn't me, said the church is not overworked. They're under challenged. And so that's always been my ministry style, is challenge the people to do what God calls to do. And so they learn to love me. They learn to trust me. I tell these younger preachers now, you need to be their pastor 5 years before you ever expect any trust that you can just, get there and love them and preach to them, be their pastor. And I think that was about the 5-year mark when I realized, and I think they realized they could trust me, and I knew they would follow it. And so God speaks to my heart, and I just say, hey, this is what we need to do. They say, okay. I'll never forget. Well, it was 1999. So I'd only been there a couple of years. So maybe it started a little, I went in 97 in 1999. So I'd only been there 2 years. Yeah. We had a Hispanic ministry. They'd had they called it the migrant ministry for years. And Jimmy Baxton, I don't know if you know Jimmy. Oh, yes. Yep. He and I began to talk, and God spoke to both our hearts. And the migrant ministry was exploding at that time. All the farms were working up here, and I was like, we need more than a migrant ministry. We need a church, Hispanic church. And there's a whole long story, and I could tell you just miracle after miracle that God did to provide that church. But so I went to the deacons, and I said, hey, this is what God's telling us to do. We need to start this Hispanic church. I'll never forget, I said to them, I don't know if it'll cost $10 and back then $100,000, that's not much money anymore. Right. I said, I don't know if it costs $10 or $100,000, but God wants us to do it. And I'll never forget Tommy Hester, he's in heaven now. He was the deacon at that time. And I looked over and tears were dripping off his face. And the deacon went. So I'm thinking, I'm thinking something's going on in his life or whatever. And I'm like, but Tommy, are you okay? And this, I'll never forget what he said. This is the most exciting thing I've ever heard in the deacon's meeting. Wow. I'm like, wow. And I looked and everybody's like, let's do it. And I'm like, so I don't know what doesn't matter what it's going to cost. Mm-hmm. And so I said to the chairman deacon, I said, we need to present this. He said, no, you need to present this. God spoke to you. So you present this to the church. And we did, and unanimously voted to whatever it took. And I think because of that, it was we had 2 buildings that we tried to tear down, try to get fire department, burn them down. They wouldn't go, there was asbestos in it. Try to get people to move them. And somebody, yes, we want them. And then it would fall through. Yeah. I'm like, there's the 2 buildings we need to remodel. We remodeled those, and God just did a miracle. I'll just brag on one of the local churches. During that time, I was up there and I did a lot of the work. I loved to work with my hands. My dad taught me how to do a little bit of, I'm one of those jack of all trades, master of none. Yes. And so I did a lot of the work, and I worked by myself up there a lot. And I kind of liked that. Nobody was able to help. I do work myself because I talked to the Lord. Right. And I was praying. We're getting close to having, we had a little sanctuary in one building, had a duplex. We had Sunday school classes on one side, and we were building an apartment for a pastor on the other side. And I was working in there, and I've been putting furniture in, and I needed a stackable washer and dryer to have in that little apartment. I already priced one, and I don't remember the exact dollar now, but it was like $938 or something. And so I'm just praying, Lord, would you provide money for this washer and dryer? And I'll never forget it. There was a knock on the door. And I don't remember what I was doing. I went to the front door, and this lady was standing there. I didn't know. Obviously, I couldn't recall her name right now. And she said, I'm Mr. So-and-so, and I'm from Gap Creek Baptist Church. And she said, we had vacation Bible school this week, and we knew what you're doing here. So we took up our offering this week. We took it up, want to give it to you. And it was, like I said, I don't remember the exact dollar. It was $938. Exactly what I needed for that washer and dryer was the exact amount. I was just like, oh, And so things like that started happening because we were just trusting God. And the people had faith. They had faith in God ultimately. They had faith in me as their pastor. And I promised them, I'll always try to tell you what God's telling us to do. If I mess up, I'll tell you, I've messed up. Let's back up. Let's don't do it. But I said, I'm going to keep my nose in the book, in the Bible, and I'm going to keep my communication line with God through prayer. And when he speaks, I'm going to tell you what he says. And so they just trust me. And maybe it's because I was so involved with that. But I just never seen a situation as good as what it was there. It was just, it didn't mean that everybody always agreed on everything, but if God told us to do it, we just do it. And so I saw that for 20 years. Well, that draws people.
Mm-hmm.
And, and evangelism was at the heart of everything we did. And missions, I could tell you so many stories. I'll just give you one mission story.
Okay.
We did mission work for 10 years in Romania.
Wow.
Over a 10-year period, we went to take teams to Romania.
That's awesome.
And we'd always raise the money for the people to go. It never cost them a dime to go.
Mm-hmm.
And we raised money. We'd buy properties over there. I love to buy beer joints and liquor stores over there and turn them into churches.
Yeah.
Shut down the alcohol, put a church in there. I could buy a nice place for $2,000 out in the country. And so this year we were running behind. Butch Darnell was a godly man. He's in heaven now. And he'd go with me. I'd say, Butch, are you going? He said, are you going? I said, yeah. He said, if you're going, I'm going. He'd go on every mission trip with him. And we didn't have the money. We were like 3 months out from leaving. And so I said, waiting, y'all may have to pay your way this time. We don't have the money. We don't have money to do projects with. And Butch said, I'll never forget it, mate. He said, I think we need to pray back there. We started praying. We had a prayer meeting right there. We started praying about that. And people don't believe this stuff. I'm telling you, I was there. I saw it happen in 3 months. We not only paid the way, and it was running, I think about that time, about $1,300 for the airline and all the stuff per person.
Wow.
I don't remember how many we had, probably around 10 or 12. We raised enough money in those 3 months to pay everybody's ways. And we took $55,000 in project money. It was incredible. I never forget a lady in church. She said, she brought a diamond ring. It was like worth $12,000. Said, God's told me to give this ring, The neat thing, so I was like, whoa, I don't want to pay you $1. And so I was like, okay. So we put it up for sale. Her son, who didn't go to church there, came and bought it from him so that he could give it back to his mom. So we just saw things like that happening. So it was incredible. People were being saved. They would be drawn, to revivals and to church services. And it was just incredible. I wish I'd kept up. I'm not sure how many got saved. A bunch of people got saved in those 20 years. And the church grew and outreach. We started the storehouse ministry there and just so much. And I just believe God blessed that and honored that we were not selfish and not focused on us. The Family Life Center, we built that, opened it to the public to start with, and everybody's telling, you can't do that, you can't do that. I'm like, well, God told me to. Yeah. And they're like, oh, you got liability. And I'm like, God owns cattle on the hills, and the hills are stand on, So we just did it, and God honored that. I'll never forget a 73-year-old Catholic man got saved because of the Family Life Center ministry. I saw him peeping in. But, I don't know. Just think there's so many stories I have. This one is kind of
let you go for it.
So there was a time that I felt like God just said to me, you don't need to wear a suit and tie to preach.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not everybody agreed to that, especially some women. They put me on. Like, you need to wear. I'm like, I'm just telling this what God told me to do. I don't want anything else to say to you. They give it a hard time. So I tell you what, at your funeral, I'll wear a suit and tie. And so we always had a good laugh about that. They just drink good laugh about it. Yeah. And so the very Sunday that I first time in that time, I don't know how many years I've been preaching, I always wore a coat and tie. And I swore, I don't know, sports, polo shirt or button-up shirt, no tie, no coat. I'll never forget, I was standing in the pulpit. I'd already started preaching. Kevin was on staff with me at that time, Kevin Hart. We'd been witnessing this guy in the Family Life Center. He walked every day. And I looked, there were little crosses in the door at the back of the sanctuary. And I could see a face in that, and being in law enforcement even then, I was like, what is going on here? So I kept my eye on him, and the door opened, and Frank walked in. And I recognized him. And he had on a T-shirt, just a white T-shirt undershirt,
right,
a pair of blue jeans. He sat down on the back. I preached the sermon, gave the invitation, and he came up the aisle, tears in his eyes, and gave his heart to Christ.
Wow.
And when he was doing that, he said, He was at Bojangles in TR. He was eating breakfast. And he said, something told me, which I explained to him, it was the Holy Spirit saying to him. He said, something made me feel like I needed to come up here. And he said, I felt like it was God speaking. But he said, I said, God, look, I'm in a t-shirt and blue. That's all I have. And he said, go. And he said, I came. And he said, I peeped in the window. I said, I saw you peeping in. He said, I looked and saw that you wasn't wearing a suit and tie. And I thought, if the preacher's not wearing a coat and tie, I should be okay. Mm-hmm. He said, I came in and sat down. Mm-hmm. And he said, that's when the Spirit of God convicted my heart. Wow. And it's just things like that. Mm-hmm. You know, a lot of churches would run you off for not having a coat and tie on. Right. But Marietta's like, you know, it's like I say, even the ones who didn't really like that, they said, you know, who are we to say? God's told you, you do what he tells you to do. Yeah. To this day, I don't wear a coat and tie with a friend. You know, because if somebody said, why don't you do it in the house? Well, he never told me to start wearing one. Right.
It's trying to wear me. It's got to sweat a little bit. It's rough with the coat and tie on. Yeah. So not as noble.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just convinced, you know, and I'm way too old now to change. I'm not going to change. Don't want to change. If God tells me, I'm just going to go. You know, every Bible I preach out of, I have a fly leaf. When God approves, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And that's been my focus.
Definitely.
You know, because it doesn't matter if you try to please people all the time, you're not going to. Mm-hmm. So, but I'm going to please God. You know, right. Hebrews 11:6, without faith, it's impossible to please him. When he becomes God, we must believe that he is, not he was or will be, that he is right now, present tense God. And he will reward those who diligently seek him. And so what that tells me, with faith, it is possible to please him. Without faith, it's impossible. With faith, so I just want to please God. And so, fortunately, when you do that, he blesses and he helps you. And the peace of God that passes all understanding keeps my heart and my mind. And I'm just not I don't worry about stuff. And, you know, there's stress gets to it too, but I don't keep stress. I cast all my cares on the Lord because he cares for me.
Definitely. So, one thing I wanted to talk about, we haven't talked on the show before, was y'all work with disaster relief program as well. Doing that. Talk about some of the experiences there, because that's
incredible. Matter of fact, I teach classes now for the state convention. I'll be down in North Charleston next week, the week after next. Okay. Teaching some classes down there now. I think the one that sticks in my mind the most was not a success story. Anytime disaster relief comes, and I think I've used it to help people realize, the results are not up to us. And with disaster relief, now we started out with chainsaw unit, and we're a bunch of old bubblers. We love to cut some trees. Skid steer, love to run skid steer. And that's a whole other story. God blessed us to have our association. We have our own skid steer. But we were in New Jersey for Superstorm Sandy. And I don't remember what year that was now. But we went up to New Jersey. And when we got there, White Hat is the guy that's in charge of the disaster relief, the whole gathering. And he just got there, and there had been no assessor there. And he's like, Benny, could y'all just go out and find your own job? I'm like, yeah, I actually prefer that. I wish get out and start riding where the storm's been, and stop and talk to people. Hey, we're Southern Baptists. We're here to help you for free. They really find that hard to believe, that we don't charge them. But we found this guy that his yard was a mess. And we had about, 7, 8 of us were there that year. And so we're told, because he had emphysema. I forget all the health issues that he had. Bill was his name. I forgot his last name now. Bill. I never forget Bill. One of the kindest men you'd ever meet. And so we'd cut trees and we'd talk to Bill. He was one of these guys. He'd have coffee and donuts and, pastries and breakfast and that kind of stuff. And we were there about 3 days, maybe. And so we started witnessing to Bill, because that's the whole goal. To say, if we cut trees, we clean up mud, whatever, but we share the gospel. And in that area, most of them didn't even know who Southern Baptists were. There's no Southern Baptist church much there. Bill could not believe the gospel. He kept saying, no, I would have to go to hell and pay for my sins before I could be saved. We're like, no, Bill, that's not how it works. Right. And everybody on the team, so I told the team that first night, I think maybe I talked to him the first day. I said, listen, we all got to witness to Bill. And so we kept witnessing him. The whole time we were with him, we'd be cutting trees, somebody would be over there witnessing to Bill. And we tried our best to win him to Christ. And when we left, with tears in our eyes, we left him not knowing the Lord. Because he just could not believe that he could get saved and Jesus would forgive all of his sin. He felt like he had to pay somehow. He kept saying, I have to be with Lucifer. He used the word Lucifer. I got to go spend time with Lucifer and pay for my sin before I could be saved. Mm. And we could not convince him otherwise. So we left there with a heavy heart. And we were all heavy heart, and I had to encourage the guys. They're like, why would I? I'm like, did we not do it right? I'm like, listen, God called us to share the gospel.
Right.
And it's up to him. If the people reject the gospel, there's nothing we can do. And so we learned how to deal with the rejection of the gospel there. And broke our hearts. A month later, there was I think it was a Catholic church that sent us a note and said, hey, Bill died, and his wife gave a donation in y'all's honor for the work you did at their home.
Wow.
Bill's death. And so that was not in our mind, a success story. But, I told the guys, Bill can never stand before the Lord and say, I didn't hear the gospel. Mm-hmm. You got the Lord put 7 or 8 of us put in his life. And that's what, those are not the times that we rejoice, but I try to encourage people, make sure God's just called you to be faithful.
Right.
And share the gospel.
Right.
But, there's a lot of others, the rest of our community, that and many other trips we made. It's been an incredible journey to see going to people having one of the worst days of their lives, mm-hmm. and be able to provide assistance to them for free and share the gospel. And we didn't see people come to Christ.
Right.
But I'll never forget, any time of disaster relief, Bill comes to my mind.
Yeah.
And, we have to do what we can do. And
right.
The results, God does not demand that we make results.
Right.
He demands that we share the gospel.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's really good. Yeah, it's really good. And now kind of transitioning to what you do now as a chaplain. For people that don't know, what is your job as you're full time as a deputy?
That's right.
But also, I think in chaplain role as well. Is that correct?
That's right.
So, what is your role?
Sure. So my main position is I'm the lead chaplain now, and I have to brag on Sheriff Hobart Lewis.
All right.
He's been our sheriff now a few years. And when he came on, so I was under 1, 2. So he's my 3rd sheriff since I became full-time. And so I've told each one as we moved on, when Sheriff Hobart Lewis became sheriff, I told him, this is what I was hired to do. This is kind of what he's like, charge ahead, you keep doing what you do. And so before I tell you what I do now, so a few, I don't know, months, maybe 6 or 8 months left. And there was another Christian who was a deputy who really, he's like, hey, I'd love to help out with you. He's helped out his time off. And so finally, the sheriff found out about it. He's like, hey, you pull him anytime he's working. If you need him, you pull him. And so last year, I lost track about what month, but maybe about summer of last year, he gave this deputy to me full time. So now Austin Fowler is my assistant chaplain, works under me full time.
Wow.
And so now I have 5 volunteer chaplains who are pastors and student pastors in the local area, and they assist us with the volunteer status.
Right.
So the chaplaincy, so I'm full-time chaplain first. So whatever's going on, we have about 600 and probably now 675 employees in the Graham County Sheriff's Office, 535 maybe sworn, over 100 civilians. And so I kind of oversee and try to help take care of them. So I told my congregation grew when I went there. And so we do that first. And, it's kind of like pastoring. When they're sick, I check on them in hospitals. We pray for them. We do, Austin and I rotated every week. We send out a devotional email and have a prayer list that we send out every week that everybody can keep up with each other and pray for one another. And then in those hard times, they're there. Someone said, we don't want, we need to know you before we need you.
Yeah.
And so what I do on the deputy side is I answer 911 calls. I'll take the call for them if they're busy, or I'll back them up on the call. And so that's how we get out there with them. Austin and I both work the road, but we're not doing chaplain work. We're out here on the road. I normally work the west side of Greenville. Austin works east and south, rotates between that. So that's how we get to know the deputies, and that's how they get to know that they can trust us and come to us. And so we do that. So we do individual counseling. We do marriage counseling with them. We counsel their children. Whatever the deputies and employees need, that we're there for them, to support them, to encourage them. And then another thing, so I'm over what's called peer support. So critical incidents that we have could be anything from an officer-involved shooting to a baby death. Those baby deaths are the hardest. I had one a few years ago. It got me. I mean, it just kind of got me. My mind, kept rolling. Some of the things I saw I was first one on the scene. Oh, really? A little 2-year-old shot itself in the head, went through his eye, come out his head. Oh, I'm trying to do CPR and trying to stop bleeding and all this. And it's too gross to even talk about it, really. Yeah. But some things that were on the scene that I saw that day, and so I had to go to them. Fortunately, a few years ago, I was doing some training in North Carolina and found out about how this company has embedded mental health clinicians. So responder services out of Asheville now. A few years ago, talked to Major Ty Miller. She's over our wellness program. She talked to the sheriff, and they all agreed we needed a mental health clinician. So now we have an embedded mental health clinician. We have 2 of them that all of us can go to and talk. I went after that incident. I actually went. They didn't even have an office yet, so they were using my office. And I'll never forget, went in. Rick was the counselor at that time. And he was going to sit in front. I'm like, no, you sit behind the desk today. That's my desk, but I need you. And he really helped me. And so Sheriff Lewis and Major Miller, they're all about the wellness of the deputies. And so with peer support, so I help as chaplain, if we're counseling, if I need to refer someone on to our mental health clinician. Oh, have you ever heard of EMDR? It's eye movement desensitization and redirection. Wow. So EMDR is what you say. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with REM sleep. When you're in REM sleep, okay, when you're dreaming, your eyes are moving. And God uses that eye movement. People say, why do I have these crazy dreams? One of the best classes I ever had in college was psychology. Correct. And Christian at Liberty University. And we learned about how the brain is like a computer. You can only hold so much information, right? You need to defrag it or clean it up, the hard drive. And he said, that's the way God works in your brain. And so dreams, that's why you have this dream where, something, I mean, when I was in Marietta, I had this dream because I was a truck driver back in the day. And it's one of the elderly ladies, like 85-year-olds. I dreamed she was my assistant truck driver. And we run in California and all these crazy things. You wake up and you're like, where did all that come from? Well, that's God's way. In REM sleep, your eyes are moving. And that's how your brain kind of moves some stuff out of the way that you don't need to hold. Right. So EMDR and our mental health clinicians licensed that. You have to be licensed. You have to have at least a master's in counseling and be licensed to do that. It's not hypnosis, but it's movement. You get the guys and talk through the situation. Well, and it helps you process that critical incident. Because your brains are, so a strange bird up there. Mm-hmm. Because it's funny, you'd have transplants from the neck down, but you can't have a brain transplant. It's almost like God has a way to help straighten that brain out. We just need to learn how to do that. EMDR is one of the ways we do that, because with these critical incidents, that incident gets stuck in your brain. That's why you get stressed. That's why you get PTSD. And so EMDR helps move that. Yes, where you can process it, you don't forget it, but if you're able to, I always like it to a shelf with boxes. And what happens when you get a box off and you get stuck, the box is sitting out here, not putting on the shelf. And the EMDR helps you get that box and put it back on the shelf. You pull it out and think about it when you need to, but you put it back on the shelf and move on your life. Sure. So we help refer to our mental health clinician if we see they need something like that, or further counseling, more in-depth counseling. And then we have a peer team. My goal right now, I'm over the peer team as well with the sheriff's office. My goal is have at least one peer team member in every, we have platoons, we have divisions, we have teams. So in every team, division, platoon, whatever its case may be, have at least one peer team member that's not dysfunctional when a critical incident happens, but on a day-by-day basis. I tell them, you're your brother's keeper. Yes, we are brother's keeper. And so, if you and I work together every day, I know how you act. It used to myself, well, then I say something a little off, I'll be like, hey, Nelson, wait a minute.
Right.
Are you okay? Well, and we don't use that term. Most people say, okay. Well, we ask, how are you holding up? Well, then you have to give me an answer. If I say, are you okay? Like, yes. Well, they're lying. So the question we ask is, how are you holding up? Well, then you got to talk to me. And so that's what we're doing with the Fear Team. So I'm just so glad Sheriff Lewis is so good to me. He allows me to set my own schedule, work where I want to work, because he trusts me to be where I need to be. So I do a lot of speaking on different, go to senior adult groups and churches. Be glad to do that. Just spoke at Marietta First Baptist senior group about safety and scams. So I do a lot of different things. I wear many hats in the sheriff's office, and I'm kind of the grandfather to a lot of these younger kids that are in law enforcement. So I love it. I love it.
Awesome. And, for a lot of police officers, we don't see it because, civilians don't see it, but they're dealing with a lot of really difficult, worst part of the percent of the population. Talk about some of the struggles they might have to go through. How we can help better understand.
Yes. The biggest thing people need to understand, a lot of the stress comes from the fact that we only have a few seconds to make a decision. I don't know what a percentage is, I'm not good on percentages, but a lot of our calls, you have to make a decision within 5 to 10 seconds, especially when it's a critical incident, when there's altering block shooting. If somebody's charges you with a knife, you can't say, well, you know what, hang on, let me think about this 10 or 15 minutes. Most people don't know this. If a suspect has a knife and they're charging you, they're like, well, why didn't you try something else? Why did you shoot them out here? 30 feet. If they're 30 feet away, by the time you can draw your weapon and discharge it, they've already stabbed. You don't do it 30 feet away. That's when you have to start reacting. Action is quicker than reaction. And people don't understand that. COVID kind of shut it down, and we had our training center. We had to rebuild a new training center. So it's not back up and running, but we're going to. We have these civilian academies where we actually have 7 editions guns, which is it looks just like a regular gun, but it shoots a bullet that stings. It's something like that. But we run them through scenarios. And the very thing they said they would never do, they'll do it in that scenario because they're so split-second decisions. Wow. So everybody needs to realize, this Monday morning quarterbacking of what law enforcement, and listen, I'll be the first to say there are a lot of incidents that they did the wrong thing. Those are cutting. We can look at those and so immediately, he should not have done that. And they should go to jail for what they did. But there are a lot of these situations. You see a little snippet of a video clip. You don't see this video of all this that's led up to this.
In one angle.
Yeah. So I think the best thing I would say to people is, don't jump to conclusions.
Right.
Because what you see may not be the whole story. It's like the Bible. If you pull a verse out of the Bible, put a few of them together, and you make it say, I remember one preacher one time, he said, how foolish it is pulling verses out of the Bible. Bible says Judas hung himself. And the Bible says, go and do likewise.
Yeah.
So the same thing, if you pulling out little snippets of a call.
Right.
So, don't jump to conclusions about that, because the vast majority of law enforcement, they're not doing it for pay. We have deputies who have had good paying jobs, and they take $20,000 and $30,000 pay cuts to come do this because they love their community, want to help people, want to curb crime in Graham County. And so they're not doing it for the money. And the vast majority are not doing it for a power issue. They're doing it because they love people, want to help their community. Right. And so, to understand the stress of, I think in December, we run January, December with our call volume. I think in December, at the end of December 22, somewhere in the neighborhood of 268,000 911 calls in Graham County.
Wow.
And when you think about that volume, because we're on calls, our radios, most of us wear a lapel mic. So you're talking to somebody, you're listening because your partner down the road may be in trouble. And so you're listening, you're hearing all these calls that are holding. And, you may have you're trying to get this call finished so you get to another call that's more severe. And so there's just a lot of stress on that. And, you become addicted at 21 years old. And, 21 years old, that's a lot of stress thrown on a young person like that.
Right.
And so they're out here trying to figure out most calls. You're going to be a counselor.
Amen.
You're going to have to interpret the law for people.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to calm people down. You got to arrest some people. Some of them got to fight people at the very best. I remember 3-4 years ago, I was out with a drunk, and I was my goal was to get him home. He couldn't be, public drunkenness is against the law. He was causing problems in the neighborhood. Trying to get him home. And I thought I had that accomplished. Next thing I know was he starts fighting. I'm by myself, and we're on the ground, and I had one handcuff on him, and I was trying to get the other one on him, and I saw in my peripheral, I saw a guy come running. I thought, I hope he's on my side, and he was. I was over in the Dunedin community. He came to help me get him in cuffs, and so I'm just like, I tried to help you, man. Now you're going to jail, and so it's that we deal with that kind of stuff every day. People do, they're going to curse us out. And we have to take it. It's interesting. If you're out here in the public, I don't know if a lot of people realize it's called PDC, Public Disorderly Conduct. In Greenville County, if you're cursing in public, and there's people who can hear you cursing, the public can hear you, then you can go to jail for that charge.
But
people can curse us, and we can't do anything about it. We have to take it. And so, people are cussing us out and, tell us how wrong we are. And so that stress, it builds up like layers of an onion. And that's why they need peer support. That's why they need mental health clinicians, because all this stuff, and then they try to go home and act like they had a great day,
Yeah.
So just understand. And people say, what can we do for them? I said, well, thank them. That means a lot. And Greenville, I'm telling you, Greenville County, we're above the national level of thankfulness for law enforcement. We're blessed, we really are.
Right.
And so people, they'll do that. People will get up to pay for our food, and they're like, somebody's paid for it. I'm like, it just puts a smile on your face. They know that people care. So just try to support us and pray for us. Lord, we need your prayers, and help us to be able to do our jobs without having to be concerned about the public, how the public looks at us. We're trying to help the community, and you have chaos without law enforcement. You're right.
Right.
So just realize that. And a lot of these people don't like the law enforcement. When they need them, they kind of like them then.
Yeah.
So, it's a tough thing, but, prayer, we need all the prayers we get. And pray to Sheriff Lewis. He leads us, and he'll make wise decisions as he helps us.
Definitely. It's so much of, without getting into it too heavily, so much of the political sentiment today is anti-police.
Yeah.
So I imagine, especially from, the community, seeing people that support them and thank them and are respectful to them when they're dealing with law enforcement, even if they're in trouble. Rush doing with them respectfully is a big thing and very helpful, I imagine, right?
Absolutely. And, I tell you, and this, this does not excuse when a law enforcement officer makes a wrong decision. I'm not saying that this is a catch-all for everything. But if you comply with what we ask you to do, we're stopping at that level. When there's levels of force that we're trained in, and as the levels of force, we stay one behind.
Mm-hmm.
And people don't realize that. They think when you're not doing the right thing, when you're one above, we can't do that. So we're one level of force behind people. When they raise a level, then we come up a level. And so it goes up. And so what happens is, if you'll just do what people say, well, I wouldn't do anything wrong. Well, then just calm down and we can work through that.
Right.
And, even if and could somebody else go to jail? Yes. We've seen that happen, But, I tell everybody, look, this is not the end of the world. You'll have your day in court, and the worse you make this situation, the worse the consequences are. Just even pulling people over for speeding or expired tags or running stop signs or red light. They start, I'm like, okay, let's calm down and realize attitude has a whole lot to do with what's going to happen here. Yeah. And so if you just calmly talk to us, then we're going to calmly talk to you. But as you move up, we come up with you. And so, this thing of just do what they ask you to do. And many times that would make this thing go away a lot quicker, because the public's reaction to us being there makes suspicion rise when you're not saying, for me, before I was in law enforcement, if a policeman, they'd talk to me, I'd be like, sure. I have nothing to hide. I'm not doing anything wrong. So sure, I'll talk to you. Whatever. I would have no problem unless I know Fourth Amendment's a big thing. I get that. Even today, if I was in another state, police officer, can I search you? I'd be like, hell, man, I don't have anything there. Right. And so, but everybody gets freaking out about this stuff. And I was like, just comply with what they say. And then things don't turn out as bad.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that some of these things happen, that would have been the answer for everything. I'm just saying 99% of the time, your reaction being in the presence of law enforcement will dictate how things go.
Mm-hmm.
So, I hope people can see, one thing I deal with, if I ever have to walk in, parents are bad to say to their kids, he's here to lock you up. I'm like, no, I'm not, but you might go. Don't tell your kid that I'm here to lock them up, because then they're afraid of us. Mm-hmm. You raise them so that they're afraid of us. So when we say, hey, come here, Wilson, and you take off running, legitimately, a lot of them are afraid of us because their parents have told them, we're the bad guy. We're going to take them to jail. Well, that's not what we're out. We're out to encourage. I carry stuffed animals and toys. And if I see a kid kind of shrieking away, I'm like, you might forget what toy. And I get what toy. The kid's like, wow, look at that.
Right.
So that's a big thing for people to know. Teach your kids and your grandkids, we're not the bad guy. We're here to help them. They can run to us if they're in need.
Definitely.
That's a big thing now.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And as a pastor and as a chaplain, you've dealt with people when they're struggling, and sometimes at their lowest point, whether it be through conversation or places you point in scripture. How do you help people, when they're going through very difficult times?
Yeah. The biggest thing when people are going through difficult times, the biggest problem they have is they lose hope.
Good.
When we had a situation not long back, there's nothing left for me to live for. I'm like, oh, yes, there is.
Right.
He lost hope. And so I'm trying to build the hope. It's kind of amazing, all this separation of church and state. My badge has cross in it. I wear a cross.
Right.
And so that opened a lot of doors. People are like, why does your badge have a cross on it? Well, that opens the door for me to talk to them about why I wear a cross.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a lot of them don't even know what a chaplain is. And so I try to, the door opens quickly for me to share them the hope they have in Christ. And so when people are going through a hard time, a lot of them have lost hope. Maybe they're mad at God. And it's amazing. I'm saying, it's okay to be mad at God. And you're like, really? I'm like, yeah, God's big. He can handle it. I'm like, you're not going to make God cease to be God because you're mad at it.
Yes.
I'm like, we get mad at him because we perceive that what we're going through is his fault.
Right.
I'll never forget someone said, I remember what people say, I don't remember who said it, but someone said years ago, don't look at this world and judge the fairness of God.
Yes.
And so I talked to them about that. Look, is this bad? Yes. And then, of course, Romans 28, I use that a lot. The Bible says that he works everything together for good. This is not good. But he's going to work this together for good in your life, and you can have hope that you have a future. And so, a lot of things we deal with is self-inflicted problems. And you have to be gentle with people. Made some bad choices today. And that's why you want so. And, so one of my goals, and this happened, I have prayed for people on the way to jail. They've been in the back seat and be like, Chaplain, would you pray for them? And I said, sure. But they were still taking you to jail, but I'll pray for you. I'll just pray for them. I prayed for them. And while we're going down the road, I'll tell them, you close your eyes, I'm going to keep mine open while we drive. Or pray for them, get them to detention. And they're at the jailhouse religions. That's a real thing. But I honestly see some people who finally get a little understanding because we're able to talk to them and help them to restore hope. And even people who, have a lot of like, now I want other religious stuff. It's okay. I understand that. But, that's where my hope is. And I'm telling you, we hope, but sometimes they're closed on that. And so I talked to them about their families and their friends. People, we had a lot of suicide attempts. It's a daily thing for us to have 3-4 calls, at least an attempt or thoughts of suicide. Unfortunately, a lot of them, they complete suicide. But a lot of times we talk to people who have survived suicide, who tried to kill themselves and it didn't work. And about every one of them say they thought it would be better for their family and friends if they were not here. And so I talk to people who are thinking about suicide. Like, I know how you feel. You think it's going to be better for your family and friends. Like, yeah, that's not true. They'll tell you that's not true. You're going to complicate their lives.
Yeah.
And so you can even build hope. And that's what I try to do, because as a chaplain, you can't force yourself on them,
Right.
And you can't force faith in Christ on them. And so there's times you have to kind of go outside, and it's really the hope we have in the gospel, is transferred out. So you can have hope, faith in your family. Friends, you have people here to support you. And then hopefully once they get them in a more stable, say, now let's go back and talk about this again.
Right.
So, but hope, lost hope, that's where you have to build, giving them hope in this world again. And to know that it's not going to always be this way. Even if they're going to jail, hey, this should be a good wake-up call. What you going to do when you get out of jail? So we get a lot of conversations with that. So,
yeah, it's really good. It's really good. One last thing, because I know this may be important to say, because I know a lot of people my age watch a lot of cop shows.
Sure.
Can you talk? I imagine there's a lot of inaccuracy in cop shows. What are some things that maybe the shows get wrong that we need to understand that that's not how it actually goes down?
Right. Yeah, and my wife, because I watch it too. Right. My wife's like, I wish you wouldn't be watching. She's like, I sit there like, that's not right. That's not true. Yeah. The one that gets me the most is tasers. On TV, if they tase you, you go unconscious, you lay there, for 30 minutes. A taser will not render you unconscious, And people, they see that on TV so much. Taser has a little laser beam, put a dot on you. And people think, they're like, he's tasing me. Like, no, you're not being tased. And so, tasers do not knock you out. And then this idea of, they just go kick your door in and go in with no warrant, there's laws that we have, that if we're going into a house, there's exigent circumstances called, if a suspect we're chasing runs into a house, we have a right to follow that. Well, it's not going to come kick your door down for no reason. And, all the things they do, one of my pet peeves I see on these cop shows, they'll be standing from, 100 yards away, FBI, then they take off running. I'm like, you don't yell FBI or sheriff's office 100 yards away,
Right.
So it's not always a foot chase. On the shows, there's always foot chase, always a car chase. But in reality, here again, I'm not big on procedure, but I would say most of the time, so more than half the time, most people are very compliant. Turn around, put your hand behind your back, you're under arrest. Turn around, put your hand behind their back. And so it's not always a fight.
Right.
TV, they're always fighting everybody. They're chasing a wrecking car.
Right.
Does that happen? Sure. But, the spectacular, takedowns and jumping off second floor buildings and, catching the bad guy, that's TV.
Right. Right.
But, in reality, most are, and I think that's really the downside of that is, you can get in a routine and everybody's just complying, but we have to keep our guard up, because then that one and done could kill you.
Yeah.
So, and this idea of watching, people like, well, I saw this show, and now the reality TV shows, the police, and those are more real to the public, because they are live, that type of thing. But so there's a lot on TV that's like,
Right.
that you just kind of need to let that know that's Hollywood.
Yeah. Definitely. Benny, I really appreciate it. This has been great. Is there anything else you want to mention before you go?
No, thank you. I watched you grow up. And, I always appreciate your dad being good friends with him. And I appreciate what you're doing. I was excited to hear that you're doing this, and that thrills my soul that you're doing something to reach out, because, we all need to be reaching out and trying to help people. That's what I think you're doing with this. And, just pray for the sheriff's office, all our law enforcement. I work for sheriff's office. There are many other law enforcement agencies. And prayed for Christians. We need more Christians being involved.
Yeah.
A lot of times people are like, well, I'm a Christian. I wouldn't want to be in law. Well, we need you in law enforcement. Because the hope of the gospel, that's what the whole world needs to hear. And you have lots of opportunities to share that. So, we're hiring.
Right.
We always have slots. I think we've got about 20 openings right now in Greenville County Sheriff's Office. GCSO.org. Go on there and put in an application. We have a lot of opportunities. Class 1, we have Class 3 officers that work in courts and work front desk. We work down on the road, working, answering 911 calls. Dispatchers, we need dispatchers. There's a lot of opportunities with the sheriff's office to be involved. And so we need more Christians in law enforcement. So wherever you like to serve, get on board.
Right.
It's a tough job, but it's a fulfilling job.
Right.
You help people.
For sure.
Awesome.
Benny, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for letting me be here today.
Yes, sir.
Enjoy it.
Yes, sir. I'm Wilson Ferris, and that's a good word.